It began with a single letter, neatly folded into a plain white envelope, tucked beneath the windshield wiper of Senator John Kennedy's pickup truck. The words inside were polite at first glance, but dripping with the sort of superiority only a homeowners association president could master. Please remove your boat from the lakefront immediately. This property is maintained for the enjoyment of the Lakeview Estates Fishing Club, and private storage is not permitted. Failure to comply may result in fines or further action. Signed, Karen Whitmore, HOA President. Kennedy chuckled as he read it, shaking his head in disbelief. The boat in question, a modest, weathered craft with a few scuffs on its hull, was tied to a dock that had been there long before Lakeview Estates even existed. The irony? Kennedy didn't just own the dock, he owned the entire lake. But Karen didn't know that, and her letter was only the beginning of a storm she had unknowingly stirred. Karen was notorious in the neighborhood. With her clipboard in hand, she patrolled the streets like a sheriff, pointing out trash cans left out too long, grass half an inch too high, and porch lights not aesthetically compliant. For her, rules weren't guidelines as they were weapons. And now she had turned her gaze on Kennedy, a man who enjoyed quiet weekends fishing, tinkering with his boat, and watching the sun melt into the water. The next day, Kennedy received another letter. This one was harsher. Immediate removal required. Fines will accrue daily. He still didn't respond. Instead, he sat on his dock, sipping sweet tea, waiting for Karen to arrive in person, and she did. With her sunglasses perched like armor and her lips pursed so tight they could cut glass, Karen marched up, pointing at his boat as though it were a crime scene. "Mr. Kennedy, you cannot keep these a broken bar. I saw a broken bar here," she snapped. "This lake belongs to the association, and the fishing club has exclusive rights. Your boat is in violation." Kennedy's eyes twinkled. "Karen," he said slowly, "do you know who owns this lake?" Her brows furrowed. "The HOA, of course, and I represent it. If you don't move this boat, you'll leave me no choice but to take legal action." Kennedy leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "Ma'am, I bought this land and this lake 20 years ago. The HOA doesn't own one drop of this water. You're fishing in my backyard." Karen froze. The silence that followed was almost comical. She had walked onto battle with paperwork and threats, only to discover she was standing on the wrong side of the war. But Karen was not the kind to admit defeat. She sputtered something about bylaws and community spirit, but Kennedy simply handed her a folder, a deed, neatly signed and notarized it, approving beyond all doubt his ownership of the lake and the land surrounding it. That moment should have humbled her, but instead, it enraged her. Within days, the fishing club, backed by Carines, sent a petition demanding access to the lake. They argued it was a community resource and threatened to escalate the matter to local authorities. Kennedy could have fought fire with fire, but instead, he did something unexpected. He invited them all to a meeting at the community center. The room was packed. Members of the fishing club sat in folding chairs, arms crossed and expressions tense. Karen sat at the front, chin high, exuding misplaced confidence. Kennedy walked in without pomp, carrying a box of old photographs, letters, and maps. He laid them out one by one, pictures of his family fishing at the lake long before the subdivision was built, faded documents proving his ownership, and letters from his late wife describing the lake as their sanctuary. "This lake isn't just water," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "It's my history. It's where my boys learned to fish, where my wife and I spent Sunday afternoons. I've let the fishing club use it for years, free of charge, because I wanted to share what I love." But somewhere along the way, sharing turned into entitlement. The room grew quiet. Even some of the fishing club members shifted uncomfortably. They hadn't realized they were demanding rights they never had. Then Kennedy dropped the final revelation. "Starting today, the Lakeview Fishing Club no longer has access. You want to fish here, you come as my guest, with respect. Otherwise, this lake is closed to you." Gasps echoed across the room. Karen shot up, livid, but her supporters didn't follow. Some even walked out, ashamed of how far things had gone. For once, Karen's power crumbled, and she stood there alone, defeated not by anger but by truth. In the weeks that followed, the fishing club disbanded, and Karen's influence waned. Without her authority, Neighbors began to see her for what she was, as someone who thrived on control, not community. Kennedy, meanwhile, quietly returned to his dock, his boat swaying gently in the water. One evening, a few kids from the neighborhood shyly approached him. "Mr. Kennedy," one boy asked, "could you teach us how to fish?" Kennedy smiled and handed them rods. He didn't need a club or an association's approval. He just needed respect, and he found it in the next generation. The lake became something new, something better. Not a battleground, but a place where people came together. And as the sun dipped behind the trees, Kennedy realized the victory wasn't in evicting Karen or disbanding her club. It was in reclaiming the simple joy of sharing his lake with those who appreciated it, not demanded it. The lesson was clear: ownership means responsibility, not dominance. And true community is built not on rules or control, but on respect, gratitude, and kindness.